Oliver James didn't expect the woman unpacking boxes next door to be wearing Laubautin heels to carry a coffee maker. He paused mid-step on his porch, bouncing his 6-year-old son, Beau, on his hip. "Buddy, hold on," he muttered, squinting toward the moving truck. The woman, tall, elegant, and clearly not from their sleepy Colorado town, was waving off the movers like she'd done this 1,000 times. Her long, dark hair was swept into some fancy twist, and she looked like she belonged in a Manhattan penthouse, not the duplex next to his. Beau tugged on his flannel shirt. "Do you think she has a dog, Dad?" Oliver tore his eyes away. "I don't know, Bud. We'll find out." He had way more important things to worry about than a rich-looking stranger. Like the fact that he was late for his second job, the water heater was leaking again, and Beau had outgrown his shoes again. Still, when the woman glanced up and caught him watching, she smiled. It wasn't polished or fake. It was warm, real. "Hi," she called out. "I think I'm your new neighbor." Oliver cleared his throat and shifted Beau to his other arm. "Yeah, looks like it. I'm Oliver. This is Beau." Beau gave a small wave, then rested his head on Oliver's shoulder like he always did when he got shy. The woman stepped closer, heels clicking against the driveway. "I'm Willow Anderson." Of course her name was Willow. It sounded like it belonged in a magazine spread about lifestyle influencers and sunset yoga. Willow crouched slightly to Beau's level. "Hi there, Beau. I just moved here from New York City. I'm still learning where everything is." Oliver raised a brow. "You moved here on purpose," she laughed. "Yes, I needed a change." He gave her a once-over. "You're gonna freeze in those shoes." She looked down and winced. "Yeah, I already regretted it walking from the truck." He couldn't help it, he laughed. "Welcome to Ridge Hollow." Willow looked around. "Would you maybe show me around sometime? I don't want to end up in the middle of some mountain trail thinking it's a shortcut to the grocery store." He hesitated. He had no time for anything outside of work and Beau, but her eyes were so hopeful, so unpretentious despite the expensive shoes and flawless skin. "Sure," he said before he could think better of it. "I can give you the unofficial tour." Willow grinned. "Deal." The next afternoon, Oliver picked her up in his beat-up truck, Beau in the backseat with his favorite dinosaur plush. Willow climbed in, somehow making the worn passenger seat look like a throne. "You okay back there, Beau?" she asked, twisting around. Beau nodded. "Dad said we're getting donuts first," she smiled. "That sounds like my kind of tour." They stopped at the bakery, the library, the tiny community center where Oliver coached Little League in the spring. She listened, asked questions, laughed at Beau's dinosaur facts, and didn't flinch when Oliver's truck stalled twice. It wasn't until they reached the Overlook, his favorite spot in town, that the silence between them grew comfortable. Willow leaned against the railing, her eyes scanning the snow-dusted trees. "It's beautiful here." "Yeah," Oliver said, watching her more than the view. "It is." She glanced at him, her expression softer now. "You grew up here, born and raised, never left, really. I was gonna." But then Beau happened. Her eyes flicked to his son, who was throwing snow at a tree. "I was 22, his mom and we weren't built to last," he shrugged. "She's not around." Willow's voice was quiet. "That must have been hard," he nodded. "It still is, but Beau's everything. I work nights at the feed store, mornings at the garage. We get by." She looked at him differently then, not with pity, with something closer to admiration. "Thanks for showing me around," she said. "I know you have a lot on your plate." Oliver shrugged. "You're not what I expected, thought you'd be, I don't know, less normal." Her laugh rang out. "I get that a lot." They stood there a moment longer, the wind tugging at her coat, Beau's giggles echoing behind them. Then she turned to him. "Hey, Oliver?" "Yeah. Would it be weird if I invited you and Beau over for dinner sometime? I want to say thank you and I could use some company." He hesitated. He hadn't been to a woman's place in years. But Beau lit up at the word dinner, and something in Willow's eyes made it hard to say no. "Okay," he said, "but only if you let me bring dessert." She smiled, and it was the kind that made his chest feel tight. "Deal?" That Friday, Willow's place smelled like roasted garlic and something fancy Oliver couldn't pronounce. She wore jeans and a soft sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. Beau was already on her couch building Legos she'd picked up, just in case. "You didn't have to go all out," Oliver said as she handed him a glass of wine. "I wanted to. I like cooking." and I figured you deserved a break." He looked around at the spotless kitchen, the warm lighting, the little touches candles, fresh flowers, soft music. "This looks like something out of a catalog," Willow laughed. "I lived in a penthouse for years. Old habits die hard." He froze. "Wait, penthouse?" She blinked. "Yeah, I used to run a startup, sold it last year." He stared. "You're rich." Her laugh was awkward this time. "I guess. I don't really think about it like that. Money doesn't mean much when you're lonely." That shut him up. Bo wandered in then, holding up a Lego car. "Willow, look, it transforms." She knelt beside him, her eyes lighting up. "That's amazing." Oliver watched them, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Willow wasn't just beautiful, she was kind, gentle, real. And for the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, his heart wasn't as closed off as he thought. The first snowstorm of the season rolled in overnight, blanketing Ridge Hollow in thick white silence. Oliver stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes one-handed while Bo sat at the counter drawing a dragon-breathing fire on a mountain. The power had flickered twice, and the old furnace wheezed with every gust of wind. "Dad, can we go sledding after school?" Bo asked, his feet swinging. Oliver glanced at the window where snow was already piling against the porch railing. "School's closed, Bud. Roads are iced over." Bo brightened. "Then can we still go sledding?" "We'll see," Oliver said, sliding pancakes onto a plate. "If the wind dies down." He didn't mention the real reason. He was worried his truck had started making a high-pitched rattle that sounded like it was one bump from quitting for good. And with the garage closed for the storm, his entire paycheck would have to stretch until next week. Bo had barely finished his breakfast when there was a knock at the door. Oliver opened it to find Willow standing there, bundled in a coat that looked warmer than anything he owned. Her cheeks were flushed, her hands wrapped around two tall travel mugs. "I brought coffee," she said, stepping inside before the wind could shove her back onto the porch. "And hot chocolate for Bo." Bo cheered and ran to grab the cup she offered. Oliver took his with a hesitant nod. "You didn't have to come out in this," he said, shutting the door behind her. "I wanted to make sure you two were okay. I heard the power lines were down on the east side of town." He raised a brow. "You heard that already," she shrugged. "I made a few calls. I've got a friend who works for the electric company." Of course she did. Willow stripped off her gloves and reached into her bag. "Also, I brought something else." Oliver blinked as she pulled out a grocery sack. "Is that cookie dough?" she said. "The good kind. I figured we'd bake and wait out the storm." "If that's okay." Bo was already dragging a chair to the counter. Oliver stared at her. "You don't have anything else to do today?" She smiled. "Not a thing." They spent the next few hours baking, the kitchen warming with the oven's steady hum and the laughter that came in waves. Bo insisted on using dinosaur cookie cutters for every batch, and Willow didn't hesitate to join in, pressing a triceratops into the sugar dough with careful precision. Oliver leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, watching her laugh at Bo's frosting-covered face. She was different here. Grounded. Not like someone who had walked away from a multimillion-dollar company. When the cookies cooled and Bo settled in with a book, Willow leaned against the counter beside him. "I used to hate snow," she said, brushing a bit of flour off her sleeve. "Too many years of black slush on sidewalks and late-night meetings while the city crawled to a stop." Oliver looked at her sideways. "So why move here?" She paused. "I got tired of being surrounded by people who only saw me as a name on a check. I wanted a place where people said hi at the grocery store, where I could breathe without scheduling it." He studied her for a moment. "You weren't happy, not even a little," she said. "I thought money would make everything easier, and in some ways it did, but the loneliness got louder. I was surrounded by noise and still felt invisible." Oliver didn't know what to say to that. He'd never had money, but he understood the silence of loneliness. Nights after Bo went to bed, holidays with no one else at the table. "You're not invisible here," he said finally. Willow met his eyes. "I know." The wind howled against the window, but inside it was warm. Later, when the snow calmed and the sun broke through briefly, Willow helped Bo into his snowsuit and followed them to the hill behind the duplex. Oliver carried the sled, its rope frayed but still holding. They spent hours there, tumbling into snowbanks and laughing so hard it echoed off the trees. Willow's coat was dusted with powder, her hair damp with melted flakes. but she didn't complain once. Bo climbed into Willow's lap for the last run and shouted, "Faster!" They flew down together, shrieking the whole way. When they reached the bottom, Willow collapsed into the snow, laughing until tears streamed down her cheeks. Oliver reached her and offered his hand. She took it, gripping his wrist as he pulled her up. Her laughter softened as their eyes met, and the closeness between them stilled the world around them for one breathless second. "I haven't laughed like that in years," she said. Oliver swallowed. "Me neither." Bo ran past them, yelling about snowball wars, and the moment broke. They walked back slowly, Willow hugging herself against the cold. Oliver noticed her trembling and shrugged off his jacket, sliding it over her shoulders before she could protest. Her eyes flicked up to his. "Aren't you cold? I'll live." She didn't give it back. That night, after Bo fell asleep on the couch mid-movie, Oliver lifted him gently and carried him to bed. When he returned, Willow had collected their mugs and was rinsing them in the sink. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to." He paused in the doorway, watching her hands move with quiet grace. "Why us?" he asked suddenly. She looked up. "You could have moved anywhere. Why stay next to a mechanic and his kid?" Willow dried her hands slowly. "Because when you smiled at me that first day, it felt like the first real thing in a long time. And because Bo told me he liked my shoes." Oliver chuckled low in his throat. "You make this place feel like home already," she said quietly. He stepped toward her, something shifting in his chest. "Willow?" She turned, eyes wide, lips parted, but before he could say another word, his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket. It was his landlord. He frowned. "I've got to take this. Sorry." She nodded, stepping back, but something unreadable crossed her face. He stepped into the hallway, answered the call, and his stomach dropped. The pipes had burst in the crawlspace under their unit. Repairs couldn't wait. They'd need to vacate for at least 3 days. Oliver hung up and rubbed a hand over his face. When he returned to the living room, Willow was zipping her coat. "Everything okay?" she asked. He looked at her, then at Bo's sleeping form. "No," he said, "but I think I know how to fix it." Her brow furrowed. He exhaled. "Would you be okay with us staying at your place for a few nights?" She blinked. "Of course, you don't even have to ask." "I do," he said. "Because I still don't know what this is between us, but I'm not going to take advantage of your kindness." Willow stepped closer. "Oliver, you're not. You've never asked me for anything. Let me do this." He nodded slowly. "Thank you." She smiled, but her eyes lingered on his like she was holding back 1,000 things she wasn't ready to say. He didn't push. But as he looked at her, standing there with his jacket still draped over her shoulders, he knew something had shifted. And it wasn't just the storm outside, it was everything. Oliver stood at the threshold of Willow's front door, holding Bo's overnight bag in one hand and a carefully folded blanket under his arm. The snow had settled into a soft hush outside, but inside her warm, light-filled home, it felt like stepping into another world entirely. He hadn't brought much, just what they needed to get through the next couple of nights. Still, he felt the weight of each item like it was a declaration of how much he didn't belong in her world. Willow opened the door before he could knock, wearing a navy sweatshirt and leggings, her hair pulled into a loose braid over her shoulder. "Come on in. I set up the guest room for Bo." "It's the one with the rocket ship sheets." Bo rushed past him with a grin, his backpack bouncing as he took off down the hallway. "I'm gonna find it." Oliver stepped inside slowly, the familiarity of her space already unsettling in a way he couldn't explain. She took the blanket from his arm without a word, folding it again with a soft nod. "I hope it's okay I used the room next to mine," she said. "The other's still full of boxes." "That's fine," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "He'll sleep better close by anyway." Willow looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. "What about you? Do you want the couch or—" "The couch is perfect," he cut in quickly. "I'm used to it." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on him a second longer than necessary before turning toward the kitchen. "I made dinner already. It's nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and roasted vegetables." Oliver followed her, the smell hitting him before he even stepped into the room. Something savory, something warm. He hadn't eaten all day. When she turned to check the oven, he noticed a small bandage on her hand. "You cut yourself," she glanced down. "Oh yeah, slipped with the chef's knife. It's fine though. You should have called me," he said. "I could have finished cooking." Willow leaned against the counter, tilting her head slightly. You were packing up your entire place with a 6-year-old and a broken heater. I figured I could handle dinner. He had no answer for that. Instead, he pulled out a chair and sat at the table while she plated the food. Every movement she made was efficient, natural, but there was a tension in the corners of her mouth. You okay? He asked as she set down the plates. She hesitated. I got a call today. From my old CFO, Oliver looked up. He wants me to come back, just for a few months, to consult during the acquisition. His fork paused mid-air. Are you going to? Willow sat across from him, folding her hands. I told him I'd think about it. I'd have to fly back and forth. A lot. Oliver didn't respond right away. Bo padded into the kitchen just then, climbing into the chair between them. These sheets are cool. They glow in the dark. Willow smiled at him, and the conversation slipped away under the weight of roasted carrots and bedtime routines. Later, after Bo was asleep and the house had gone still, Oliver sat on the couch with a throw blanket over his lap, staring at the muted television. Willow stepped into the room with 2 mugs of tea, handing him one before curling into the armchair across from him. Thanks, he said, taking it. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. Too many thoughts. Oliver took a sip. About the job, she nodded, and about you and Bo and this place. He lowered the mug. You thinking of leaving? I don't want to, she said quietly. But I also don't know if staying means I'm giving up too much. He set the mug down on the coffee table. You've already proved you don't care about money. That's not what I mean, she said. There's a version of me that only exists in New York. She's sharp, focused, respected. Here, I feel like I'm trying to figure out who I am all over again. Oliver leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Willow's eyes met his. What about you? If you could leave, would you? He didn't flinch. Not without Bo, and not unless I had a reason. Right now, this is where I'm needed, she nodded slowly. That's what I thought. The silence between them stretched, not uncomfortable but heavy with things unsaid. Then she stood up, walked over, and sat beside him, not across, not at a distance, right beside him. I've been thinking about something, she said. Oliver turned to her, unsure what she was about to say. I used to think love had to look a certain way, big gestures, grand promises, but maybe it's smaller than that. Maybe it's staying up to make sure someone gets home safe. Or holding back so they don't feel overwhelmed. He didn't move. He couldn't. I feel more seen in this town than I ever did in skyscrapers and boardrooms, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And I think you're the reason. Oliver exhaled slowly. Willow, but she shook her head. Don't say anything yet. I'm not ready to make this complicated. I just needed you to know. She stood, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Good night, Oliver. And just like that, she disappeared down the hallway. He sat there for a long time, the sound of the wind outside replaced by the quiet thud of his heartbeat in his ears. The next morning, Oliver woke to the smell of coffee again, but this time, it wasn't coming from her kitchen. It was the instant kind he kept in his own cabinet, and it was sitting on the coffee table with a note beside it in Willow's handwriting. Figured you'd want the kind you're used to. He stared at it for a full minute before Bo came padding in, hair a mess, rubbing his eyes. Dad, can we stay here forever? Oliver looked down at him, his chest tightening. Maybe not forever, buddy, but maybe a little longer. From the kitchen, he could hear Willow humming to herself as she prepped breakfast. He didn't know what was going to happen next. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid to find out. The first hint of spring came with the scent of thawing pine and a sunrise that painted the mountains gold. Oliver stood on Willow's porch, rubbing the back of his neck as she tied the laces of Bo's hiking boots with practiced ease. The boy bounced on the balls of his feet, already wearing the headlamp she'd bought him the week before. You're sure the trail's safe this early? Oliver asked, eyeing the fog lifting off the treetops. Willow looked up at him, her tone even. I checked with the ranger. No ice past the first ridge. Besides, Bo's been begging me to see the waterfall again. Bo grinned, flashing his missing front tooth. I packed snacks and my map. Oliver crouched to zip up his jacket. Stay close to her the whole time, no wandering. I will, Bo promised, holding up 2 fingers in a solemn salute. Willow stood, brushing her hands on her cargo pants. We'll be back by lunch. If you need anything, I won't. Oliver said, meeting her eyes. She hesitated, then stepped closer. You've been quiet since I turned down the New York job, he exhaled through his nose. I just didn't expect it. I didn't either, but I meant what I said. This place feels different now, I feel different, he nodded, his expression unreadable. Be careful out there. Bo tugged her hand. Let's go. Willow gave Oliver one last look before following Bo down the steps, disappearing into the soft light of morning. By the time they returned, Oliver had replaced the broken step on her back porch and mended the loose hinge on the pantry door. He was wiping his hands on a rag when Bo burst through the screen door, breathless and rosy-cheeked. There were deer tracks and a baby fox, and Willow let me lead us back with the compass. Willow followed behind, hair wind-blown and cheeks sun-kissed. He's got a good sense of direction. Better than mine. Oliver gave Bo a quick hug before standing to face her. You ever think about just staying here full-time? She raised an eyebrow. You mean not bouncing back and forth, not half living out of boxes? He nodded slowly. I have, she said. More than I want to admit. They stood in the fading warmth of afternoon, the air filled with the quiet hum of distant birdsong and the clatter of Bo upstairs, already retelling the hike to his stuffed animals. Willow stepped closer. You're still guarding yourself. Oliver's mouth tightened. I've got a kid, I can't afford to get it wrong. I'm not asking you to promise anything, she said. I'm asking you to let this be real, whatever it is. He looked down, then back at her. You scared me, you still do. She didn't flinch. Why? Because you walk into a room and change the temperature. Because Bo lights up when you talk to him. Because I don't know if I'm what you really want. Willow touched his wrist, her voice low. I didn't fall in love with ease or polish or some idea of a man. I fell in love with the way you carry everything and never complain. With the way you make my world quiet when I didn't even realize it was loud. He stared at her, swallowing hard. Say that again. She stepped closer, her hand now flat over his chest. I love you. He didn't kiss her. Not at first. He just breathed her in like he was committing the moment to memory. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. It wasn't rushed. It was grounding. Like everything that had been unspoken between them finally had a voice. That night, Oliver made dinner. He used every pot in the kitchen, overcooked the pasta, and underseasoned the sauce. But Willow didn't complain. She sat at the table with Bo, helping him glue googly eyes onto a cardboard robot, both of them laughing like they were exactly where they were meant to be. Later, after Bo had fallen asleep on the couch again, Willow curled against Oliver as he draped a blanket over them both. You know, she murmured, I've been thinking about buying something. He cocked an eyebrow. Another pair of heels, she grinned into his shoulder. No. The house next door, he went still. I want to gut it, redo the whole thing, make it ours. He pulled back, searching her face. You're serious, she nodded. I have the money, I finally have the reason. Oliver exhaled, a slow smile spreading across his face. You really want a life here, with you, she said. And Bo, if you'll let me. He kissed her again, slower this time. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. I never thought I'd get this. You did more than get it, she whispered. You built it. 3 months later, Willow stood at the edge of their new backyard, watching as Oliver helped Bo hammer the final plank into the treehouse they'd built together. The house next door had been transformed, open windows, wide porches, warm light glowing from inside. The yard was full of laughter, friends from town, a grill smoking in the background. Oliver stepped down from the ladder and walked over, wrapping his arm around her waist. You happy? He asked. She leaned into him. More than I ever thought possible. He kissed the side of her head. We did good. She looked up at him, eyes shining. We did better than good. And as Bo shouted from the treehouse, claiming it as his pirate ship, and the sun dipped behind the mountains, Oliver finally let go of the weight he'd carried for so long. Because love had found him in the most unexpected place next door, and for the first time in his life, it felt permanent, not because of luck, but because he'd earned it. Willow stood at the community center's back patio, her clipboard tucked under one arm and her sunglasses pushed into her hair. The Spring Fair fundraiser had turned into a bigger event than she'd anticipated. Dozens of booths, a petting zoo, even a bounce house that Bo had already begged to stay in forever. She glanced across the lawn where Oliver, in a navy button-down and jeans, was helping Beau and two other kids set up the lemonade stand. She hadn't meant to end up organizing the whole thing, but once word spread that she had connections, the town council had been quick to ask for help. So she'd done what she did best, made things happen. But unlike in New York, this wasn't about profit margins or press releases. This was about raising funds for the library's roof and giving kids a place to laugh in the sunshine. "Miss Anderson," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Mrs. Keating, one of the older volunteers, holding a tray of cupcakes. "Any idea where these go?" Willow smiled. "Third table on the left, next to the crafts booth. Thank you so much for baking." The woman nodded and shuffled away. Willow exhaled, adjusting her clipboard and scanning the crowd. A few months ago, she was still unpacking boxes. Now she was on a first-name basis with the entire town. And somehow the world felt smaller but deeper. "Hey," Oliver said, appearing at her side with a paper cup of lemonade. "Beau says he's officially a businessman now," she chuckled, taking the cup. "He's got the charm for it." Oliver tilted his head. "You okay?" "I'm just making sure everything runs smoothly. It's the first time I've done something like this without investors breathing down my neck." He glanced around. "Well, no one's breathing today. Except maybe the goat behind the popcorn stand." She laughed, the sound lighter than she realized. "It's strange," she said. "I used to measure success in quarterly growth. Now it's in whether we raised enough to fix a roof." Oliver leaned in slightly. "You've done more for this town in 3 months than most people have in 10 years. She looked at him, her chest warming. "That matters to me." He was quiet for a beat. Then he reached into his back pocket and held out a folded envelope. "What's this?" she asked, eyebrows rising. "Open it." She peeled it open and pulled out a printed real estate listing. Her eyes scanned it. It was an old bakery on Main Street, one she'd mentioned once in passing, saying it had potential if someone invested the time. "I heard it's going up for auction," he said. "I talked to the owner. He's willing to hold off if someone makes an offer soon." Willow looked up. "You want me to buy a bakery?" "I want you to have a place here that's yours, not borrowed, not next door, yours." Her throat tightened. "But I don't bake. You organize, you create, you bring people together." "It doesn't have to be a bakery," he said. "It can be whatever you want." She stared at the listing again, then back at him. "You think I can do this? I know you can." Before she could respond, Beau ran up, his face flushed and his shirt untucked. "Dad, Willow, they're starting the raffle." "Come on." They followed him to the stage, where Mayor Halbridge was pulling names from a jar. As the winning numbers were announced, Beau tugged Willow's hand. "Did you put your name in?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nope, I'm just here to help," he frowned. "But you helped the most." She bent down to his level. "You know what? Seeing everyone here having fun, that's better than winning." He thought about it, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but next year you should put your name in." Oliver offered his hand, helping her up from the grass. "You're already winning, Willow." She looked at him, the fair buzzing around them, and for the first time she believed it. A few weeks later, the sign over the old bakery changed. It now read, "The Gathering Place." Inside, it wasn't just a cafe or a shop. It was a space for live music nights, community classes, and weekend farmers markets. Willow didn't run it to make money, though it held its own. She ran it because it gave people a reason to slow down, to connect. Oliver helped on his days off, building shelves and refinishing the handmade tables they'd found at a salvage yard. Beau had his own employee badge and a stool behind the counter with his name on it. The town rallied around them, not because of who Willow had been, but because of who she'd become here with them. One Friday evening, as the sun dipped low over the town and the cafe buzzed with quiet music and laughter, Oliver stood behind the counter, drying a mug. Willow walked in from the back, her hands dusted with flour and her cheeks flushed. He watched her for a moment before setting down the mug. "Close your eyes," he said. She raised a brow but obeyed. He pulled something from his back pocket, a thin velvet box, and stepped closer. "Okay," he said. She opened her eyes slowly, her breath caught. It wasn't a diamond. It was a ring made of hammered gold, simple and warm, with a small engraved mountain etched into the band. "I didn't want to give you something that looked like your old life," he said. "I wanted something that felt like this one." Her hand flew to her mouth. I don't need a ceremony or a big crowd, he said. Just you, me, Beau, and a forever that starts right here. Tears welled in her eyes. Yes, yes, Oliver. Absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him, laughing and crying all at once. From the corner, Beau clapped like it was the best magic trick he'd ever seen. They didn't rush into planning. There were no save the dates or dress fittings. Just a quiet gathering behind the cafe a few weeks later, with Beau tossing wildflowers and the town stringing lights between trees. Willow wore a pale blue dress, and Oliver wore the look of a man who'd finally found home. As they exchanged vows under the soft sway of lanterns, Willow's voice never wavered. I didn't come here looking for love, she said, but I found it in a broken truck, in a warm kitchen, in every quiet moment you gave me space to breathe. Oliver took her hands. You didn't just change my world, Willow, you made it whole. When they kissed, Beau let out a loud cheer and the crowd erupted in applause. Later, long after the last cupcake was eaten and the music faded, Willow and Oliver stood in the doorway of their shared home, watching Beau asleep on the couch, a book open on his chest. Oliver wrapped his arms around her from behind. You happy? He whispered. She leaned into him. More than I ever knew I could be, he kissed her shoulder. Let's never leave this place. We won't, she said. We already built everything we need. And just like that, they closed the door behind them together, always.